All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. E-collar training, so that way we can get our dogs off leash, living their best lives. For those of you who do not want to use an e-collar, okay, just make sure that if you have your dog off leash, they have 100% recall, and I mean 100%. No matter what distractions you have, they will return to you when you give them the recall command. Now, I do not recommend doing off-leash freedom without the e-collar. This is because at some point your dog will have an irresistible urge to pursue one of their drives. Typically, it's a squirrel, it's a dog across a busy road, whatever's kicking your dog into drive, your dog's gonna want it and they are going to blow you off. And maybe not even necessarily because they are choosing to blow you off. It's because they are blacking out, their drive is taking over, and they don't even hear you anymore. So what this does is acts as an invisible leash. The same way that we taught leash pressure, we are going to use the e-collar to apply the same techniques. All this is an invisible leash. It's another line of communication that you can use for your dog. Some people do view e-collars in a negative light, and that is because they've heard the horror stories of people utilizing them in completely inappropriate ways. I'm going to walk you through all the steps on how to properly condition your dog to this e-collar pressure to the point where they are not going to be scared of this equipment. A majority of the time, we are only going to be using the e-collar as pressure. But yes, we can use the e-collar as a punishment as well. I will also teach you how to do that fairly and appropriately. There are 3 ways that we are going to apply the e-collar stimulation. 1, that invisible leash pressure. 2, punishment. This is still not going to be at a very high level. 3 is going to be a drive interrupter. This is going to be at a high level. Drive interruption refers to those moments that I mentioned where your dog is going to see something that kicks them into drive, and they are not even going to hear you when you are recalling them. Going to a higher level in this, in that emergency to prevent them from running across a busy road, is going to allow you to interrupt that drive and prevent them from putting themselves in that life-threatening situation. We use Easy Educator brand. This model is the Easy 900. You do not need to use this specific brand. You do not need to use this specific model. But make sure if you're going to use a different brand, I would 100% sure it has the exact same type of level range as this one. But I highly suggest using this. This is the only brand I use. So let's go over this equipment. This is the transmitter. This is the receiver. To turn on the receiver, you're going to see that it has a red dot right there. On the transmitter, it also has a red dot on the back of the controller. To turn this on, put those 2 dots together, and you're going to see that that light went green. It continuously gives you a flashing green light to let you know what the battery level is at and that it is on. If the light is green, it's got a good charge, you don't have to worry about it. If it turns to orange, you should probably charge it. If it's red, you definitely need to charge it because the last thing you want is for this to be dead when you need it most in that emergency situation. To turn on the transmitter, on the side there's an on and off button. We are just going to hold that until it says on. Once your transmitter is on, the display will be visible. Turn the transmitter off by holding that same button. The on and off button does have another function. Pressing it once will engage the LED light. Okay, that'll be flashing. Pressing it a second time will be a continuous LED light. This is super beneficial when you're out with your dog during hours of darkness. Tapping it a third time disengages that LED light. Looking at that screen, you see an M and a C on this side. M stands for momentary, C stands for continuous. If I press this side black S button, it will engage momentary. See, that's the only one showing is the M right there. If I use this side red S button, it engages the continuous. And you can see that right there. Now this dial right here is very sensitive, so when you are changing the number on here, you need to be very cognizant of what that number is displaying. Right now I have it at 0. If I barely touch this, you see how far that jumps up, and I am barely rolling that wheel. So if I'm doing it without paying attention, I just jacked it all the way up to 40 and I barely rolled it. To prevent accidentally rolling the wheel up while it's in your pocket and accidentally providing your dog with a way higher stimulation than intended, we can lock the wheel. To do this, we are going to engage the side P button. Do you see the flashing 1D at the top of that display? That means the wheel is not locked. But if you hold the P button, it will go to solid. That means the wheel is now locked. Something that you need to keep in mind is even when this is locked, this wheel keeps a memory. So as this goes up and I unlock it, that number went all the way up to 95. So after you unlock it, always check the number on the display and bring it back down to your dog's required level. During the first week of e-collar training, we will not go above 10 for a stimulation level, and we will get further into that later into this lecture. Another function of this transmitter that you will not be engaging in for a while during the e-collar training, but we'll get further into it, is if you hold the continuous button and then you press the side red button above it, it jumps it 5 points. Now, like I said, don't worry about that for a while. We will dive further into that later into the course. The first thing we are going to do with this e-collar is place it on our dog and not use this transmitter for at least the first 3 days. The reason for this is because we do not want our dogs to become tool savvy. If we put this on our dog for the first time and then go straight into the conditioning process, they will understand that this tool is what brings the stimulation. We do not want that because we do not want them to only pay attention to us and hold themselves accountable when this is on. There are going to be times where you forget to put your e-collar on your dog and you leave it at home. You do not want your dog to understand that if their e-collar isn't on, they don't have to listen to you because you can't hold them accountable. The last thing we want is Scruffy to disappear into the tree line for an all-inclusive 3-day, 2-night vacation just because they know you can't do anything about it. Once you get past those first 3 days, we are going to get into e-collar conditioning. This is the same concept as leash pressure conditioning. So at this point, the first thing we need to do to condition our dog to the e-collar is find their working level. Their working level will be the lowest stimulation number that they can actually feel. This totally depends on arousal. So in a room like this, where the dogs spend a lot of time, it's very baseline, very low environmental stimulation, that working level is going to be lower. In an environment that causes higher arousal, that working level will be higher. So for example, if your dog's working level in a very baseline environment is 5, then it might be 8 or 9 in an environment that is a little bit more arousing. When we're finding the working level for our dog in a baseline environment such as this one, we are only going to adjust this dial one number at a time. When finding our dog's arousal working level in a more exciting environment, I only go up 2 or 3 at a time. Placement of this receiver box on your dog's neck is pretty important. It's all based on the amount of fat or muscle and also the moisture level. You can see this for yourself when you test it on the palm of your hand. I'm going to set this to 25 and I'm going to place it on my hand in different positions. I have the continuous button engaged, you can see the lights on. In the center of my hand, I can't really feel anything, but once I start getting towards that meaty part, I can feel that. The same concept applies to your dog. This is Reggie, he's our helper dog. He's super well behaved, very well trained. We've been working together for quite a while now, so you can see he's super docile. And his ability to chill out and just hang, real good. So we're going to use him as the lecture demonstration before we do the lesson with Willow. When explaining where to place the transmitter box on your dog's neck, I like to use a clock as a reference. So the 12 o'clock would be on the very top, 6 o'clock right at the bottom. The range of where I put it is anywhere from the 1 to the 5 or the 7 to 11, just depending on which side the box is on for your dog. I've seen some trainers place the box directly on the dog's trachea. I'm not going to say whether they are right or wrong for doing this. All I know is I would not want those nodes pressing into my throat, so I'm not going to do that to my dog. The height of this e-collar is also important. We never want it to be very low on the dog's neck. If it's nice and tight down here at the base, it's going to be very loose when it goes up higher on the dog's neck. Down here, when it's nice and tight, I cannot pull this box away from the dog's neck. As soon as it comes up higher, I can get a solid ½ inch in between the dog's neck and these nodes. So let's use the average high drive dog I work with, such as Willow. She is in this crate right now. She's a 1.5-year-old, very high energy German Shepherd. Her leash training collar is a prong collar, but I also use the slip lead as a safety system, and I'll get further into that shortly. We're going to be using Willow as the e-collar demonstration dog for this course. She has not been trained with the e-collar yet, so she'll be a perfect example. But the way that she's going to be wearing this is the e-collar a bit higher, the slip lead all the way at the base, with her prong collar all the way up top, just like you learned in the on-leash obedience portion. So why am I using a prong collar still if she's e-collar trained? There's going to be times that it's inappropriate to have your dog off leash, so you still need to be able to have the effective tools to communicate with your dog properly when you have them leashed. This prong collar is Willow's prong collar. It's too small for this dog here, so I'll just let it hang in the proper position, but this is going to be the order of the collars for her. Prong on top, e-collar in the middle, slip collar on the bottom. When we leash our dog, we are going to clasp the leash to the slip and the prong. That way, when you're engaging this prong, this still has enough slack to where it's not activating the slip collar. But if this prong was to break for any reason, maybe there was a crack I didn't notice when I was inspecting it, if this breaks, your dog is not going to be loose. The leash will still be attached to the slip collar, and you're going to have this as a safety net. So if you're out and about with your dog and you see something approaching that you know your dog is not going to be ready for, maybe there's a horse coming by and your dog's never seen a horse, you're going to want to attach to your leash tools. If for any reason they lose their mind, you do not want them to be on the e-collar and just dart away while you're trying to apply pressure, making that fearful or reactive situation that much worse for your dog. Now, if the leash collar you're using is simply a flat collar, the flat collar is going to be the lower collar. That's a bit too tight on him, but he's not real. Not sure if you guys realize that. So now we'll have the flat collar being in the middle of the dog's neck and the e-collar being all the way at the top where that prong collar was. When initially starting the process of finding your dog's working level, we are going to start at 1. So when your dog's being neutral, go ahead, press that continuous button, release, and look for a change of behavior with your dog. A change of behavior could be anywhere from them scratching at their neck or an ear twitch. Another common change of behavior is the "what the heck is that" face that your dog will give you. And what that looks like is your dog's just hanging out. Then they finally feel the first stimulation from this e-collar, and they kind of do this. Right? What the heck is that? They go from panting, happy-go-lucky, all of a sudden to, what the heck? That's another common one that you might see your dog do. Another common behavior you might see your dog do is sniffing the ground. They're trying to figure out what that stimulation was. During this process, every single time you press this stimulation button, you're going to follow it up with a treat, even if you believe your dog did not feel it. This will ensure that your dog's first experience with this stimulation is a positive one. Now again, even if you don't believe your dog feels it, you're going to give it a treat. This is because some dogs are stoic and they internalize these emotions or reactions. That's another reason we do not go above 10, because I guarantee you every dog in their baseline environment feels this when it gets to 10. You might have one of these dogs, so if you get all the way to 10, there's a few things that might be going on. 1, they internalize it. 2, maybe this placement isn't correct. It might not be tight enough. There's going to be things that you need to do to troubleshoot it. You can check the tightness, make sure that box is staying connected when you pull. Another thing you can do is hold your dog's skin and work that box upward a little bit, so that way those nodes will work their way under the hair and actually make contact with the skin. We need these nodes to contact the skin. Another might be the box placement. So if your dog is not following it right here, another solid, reliable spot is right up behind the ear. Try that. You can try in different spots to make sure that maybe it's just the box positioning rather than your dog internalizing that emotion. If you engage the button and you think you might have seen a change of behavior but you're not sure, give your dog the treat and then apply the same number. Watch again, see if you notice any change. If not, continue on to the next number. When you're going through this process, you need to take it slow. This is a very important phase, and we need to make sure that we condition our dogs properly to this. We need to make sure that we find their proper working level. So as excited as you are to get into this portion and get your dog training off leash, we need to take it slow. We need to make sure we do this part right. This can also be the most annoying phase of training for some. Like I said, sometimes you have to do some troubleshooting. And quite often, a lot of the dogs I work with, I do have to troubleshoot. If and when you find yourself in this situation, do not rush it. Take your time and ensure this process is being done correctly. This tool, in my opinion, is the greatest invention for dog training of all time. It can be used in so many ways and benefit you and your dog's life endlessly, but only if you do this phase properly, which requires patience. The Easy Educator brand collars come with a long strap such as this one, but what I did was I ordered the upgraded strap, which has this elastic in it. That way, when I tighten this all the way down and as tight as it needs to be, it still has a lot more flex and give. That way, when my dog is moving around, they're running, they're having the time of their lives, this is flexing, giving them freedom of movement, but also allowing it to be tight enough to stay in position. I would highly recommend using this one. You may have also seen the other replacement straps that are this band, but at the very top, it's just a bungee cord that you can tighten down all the way until it's a good fit. Those are a good option, but it still requires a lot of supervision because I have heard plenty of stories where the dog is running up and down the fence line or they're playing with one of their sibling dogs and that bungee strap gets caught and just gets yanked and tightens all the way down, restricting the dog's ability to breathe. If that happens when you're not monitoring, that's potentially life-threatening. With these ones, it has the buckle. That is not going to tighten it anymore. It still has the bungee to give it flex. So as convenient as those bungee pull replacement straps are, I'm still going to recommend that if you upgrade your collar's strap, you upgrade to this one. In my opinion, it's the safest and most effective option.